Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengals podcast, presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, and we're joined by our Cincinnati Bengals Insider Charlie Goldsmith. And Charlie, Week 3 Sunday at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota was not good. This was probably one of the worst Bengals performances that I've seen in the years since Zach Taylor has become the head coach. His teams normally fight, they play hard, they're well buttoned up, but nothing seemed to go right in this Week 3 game against the Vikings.
You got to start with the turnovers and the fumbles that can happen, especially at that point of the game. A play where Jake Browning tried to do too much in the first half and another pick by Browning in the second half. But how they got there was kind of some of the flaws on the roster being exposed, specifically the offensive line. On early downs, they got nothing going in the run game. On third downs, they had no answers for the Vikings' complex blitz scheme. You saw especially the rookies get fooled a few times. You saw some of the veterans be a step slow. And it was a concerning performance. They were behind every single play from a scheme and an X's and O's and talent standpoint on the field, and that all adds up.
If you had to try to find a player of the game, this would be the one game where I could say, I don't know that there would be any one player. And I'm not here to point people out. It was just one of those days. As you well know, I thought the offense was overwhelmed. The inability to be productive in the run game. Right now, the Cincinnati Bengals have the worst ranked rushing attack in the National Football League. They have the lowest rushing total of any offense through the first 3 games to start the season. It's not what you would think about a team that's 2-1. And now that 2-0 start, it begins to ring hollow, particularly when you don't have a Joe Burrow, you have a Jake Browning, and you expect to be able to run the ball to supplement and help him with the offense. But right now, that's just not happening.
What was so alarming about this week was their plan was to run the ball more. They had more 12 personnel concepts in with the way they used personnel, with the way they put personnel into the game, with the way they managed the game early on, showed that they wanted this to be, from a play calling perspective, like what I like to call an old Big Ten West style football game. Field position, conservative, pound the rock, have some good punts. And the run game, which was supposed to be a focal point, ended up being, frankly, a disaster. And I went through it all, and I think the offensive line is mostly to blame for that. The tight ends need to be better as well. And then, of course, the scheme has to improve significantly. But there was just absolutely nothing there all day and all season for Chase Brown.
Cincinnati Bengals averaging 49 rush yards per game, ranked dead last in the National Football League. They're averaging 2.4 yards per rush attempt, and they've only had 2 runs from the line of scrimmage over 10 yards or more. Certainly, they can do better. They're going to have to do better if they're going to try to protect their quarterback, Jake Browning, because teams are now going to pin their ears back and come after the quarterback. And the way that you slow down teams is you got to run the ball. Now, we got to talk about this. The ability to protect the football. What is the sense of what Zach Taylor is telling his players? You're talking 3 fumbles in the game on back-to-back possessions. There was a period of 4 offensive plays where the Bengals had 3 fumbles in 4 offensive plays, and it was because they literally just came and punched the ball out and took the ball away from Cincinnati Bengals offensive players who, let's face it, the coach is going to have to trust to carry the football in the upcoming games.
Yeah, the players who fumbled, 3 players who didn't have a single fumble in all of 2024. But just a reminder of how these fumbles can come in bunches. When a team sees an opportunity, when they view you as a team or an opponent or a player that leaves the ball exposed, well, blood's in the water. And that's kind of what you saw from Minnesota. They felt like they were going to be able to punch the ball out. So they got more and more confident taking those chances. And 3 of them in a very short time paid off. It's something the Bengals are literally going to have to drill this week. I'm sure there will be presentations and meetings involved about protecting the football. I bet they do stuff on scout team where, the scout team's trying to punch the ball out. I bet it's going to be a lot of different stuff that the Bengals try this week, because ball security is where that game really became a blowout.
I would tell everybody to punch the ball out. I don't care if you're walking down the hallway. I'm going to have the secretaries punching at the ball, just punching at whatever it is an offensive player is carrying. This is becoming more prominent around the National Football League. And Charlie, I think you could speak to this because you did kind of hint towards it. Once teams see other teams do that against you, the upcoming games that you're going to play in, those teams now are going to adopt some of the same methods.
It's a copycat league, and I think what you're going to expect is, like you're saying, teams try to punch the ball out. Like we were talking about earlier, I think we're going to see a lot of teams blitz the Bengals more and try to change the picture more often at the line of scrimmage. Burrow might be the best in the world at diagnosing all that, but Browning showed where he's at from that standpoint on Sunday. So I think teams, especially Denver defense that can do a lot of similar things, is going to kind of try to replicate a lot of what Minnesota did really well. And it's up to the coaches, the Bengals coaches this week, to give the team the right answers to make those adjustments in just 8 days.
Hey, we want people to know that one of our proud sponsors is, as you can see, heroes.com. And they have these wonderful tumblers. We're going to have to get you one, Charlie. Look at that.
That's right.
Bleav in
Wow.
Bengals. How about that? And all you got to do is go to heroes.com and look. We'd love for you to send us questions because Charlie and I will answer your questions here on the show. The people who ask the best questions, we're going to send you one of these tumblers. You go to heroes.com by using the promo code here, and you can order your own tumbler. And of course, it is a Bleav in Bengals tumbler. They have them in black as well as in orange. You can get it in whatever color you ask for. So go to heroes.com. But look, getting back to the Cincinnati Bengals, I want to ask you more about Jake Browning because, look, it looked like he's going to be the starter the rest of the way. I think you expected him to play better. I expected him to play better. I know Zach Taylor and the whole team expected him to handle things better. The first interception, he kind of got outside himself. He threw the ball late to the outside. It was tipped, but that was a pivotal play. It led to an interception return for a touchdown. Next thing you know, the Vikings are up 14-0. The Vikings offense didn't do much in this game. It was like our offense gave the ball away so much that our defense didn't have a chance to come away with any stops. The Vikings scored 2 touchdowns with our offense on the field. In fact, the Vikings defense outscored our offense. They scored 14 points. So, and what can Jake Browning do and what can Zach Taylor do with Jake Browning to help him to be his better self, more of the Jake Browning we saw in 2023?
More than I think any game that I've covered during my time doing this, the game just keeps going back to one thing, and that's the offensive line. I went through all of Jake Browning's third down dropbacks and all of his pressures, and there were only 2 plays all day where I thought Jake could have done anything differently. And one was the pick six. That's a 7-point swing. But even so, the pressure really let up and the offensive linemen needed to be stickier as blockers as the first play kind of became the second play on that scramble drill. So they had a part in that pick six as well. And then the rest of the game, Browning just had absolutely nothing to work with. So the Bengals were then getting off the field very quickly. And then the defense, which for the first 29 minutes of that game, 28 minutes, the defense was playing very, very well. Now, they weren't playing great competition. I was very impressed with what I saw from the defense. But then with all the turnovers, they're on the field all the time. They're gassed. The time of possession is absolutely skewed. There's no defense in the league that's going to be able to win in those scenarios. Now, sure, Geno Stone has to tackle a lot better. The linebackers have to kind of diagnose stuff better against the run, and the edges need to be better against the run. But that was a fine enough performance until it was a 31-point game by the defense. But they were in that spot because of the offense, because of the run game, because how they didn't have the answers for pressures. So how do you fix the defense? You need to fix the offensive line. It keeps going back to that.
Yeah, when you give up so many points off the 5 turnovers, it can become very discouraging, very difficult to play because you're in sudden change situations. But in a couple of those cases, Isaiah Rodgers returned the interception for a touchdown. He returned the fumble, the scoop and score for a touchdown. Defense couldn't stop those. Next thing you know, the score was completely out of hand. I got to ask you this. When it comes to our offensive line, because I do think Scott Peters, the new offensive line coach, is a really good coach. I do think Dylan Fairchild the left guard. I think he's going to be a really good player in this league. There were miscommunications where the center turned one way, the guard turned another way. In comes a defender hitting Chase Brown right in the backfield. I think when Chase Brown got the ball on several occasions, he was immediately hit in the backfield, not even back to the line of scrimmage. We're not even talking about protecting the quarterback yet. This is just generating blocking in the run game, Charlie. How do we get this fixed? Is this more about scheme? Is it more about technique? Is this more about personnel? What are you hearing from the Bengals on that?
Well, I start with the fact that they have a rookie left guard who's been playing all season. Most of the season, it's been a right guard who did not participate in any training camp with the Bengals, and that was Dalton Risner. And then he got replaced in the second half by another rookie right guard. That was Jalen Rivers. And by my count, I kind of went through it manually. I'm pretty sure I'm right here. The Bengals haven't had two rookie offensive linemen start a game since the same time since 1996. And it sounds like it's going to be a battle between Rivers and Risner here as the coaches see where they're both at. They could break that on Monday on the road against one of the best defenses in football. That's just a tough way to live. That's just a tough way to live. No matter how good these guys are, you'll find very few teams that can win that way. Add in the fact that Orlando Brown hasn't played well through 3 games, that Ted Karras hasn't had enough. He's been fine, but he hasn't had enough. Amarius Mims is actually playing really well, but that doesn't even matter.
Man, how can we generate run game? I think we got to be more creative in how we run. This is not second guessing coaching. I Bleav that when you really want to run the football, when you really want to protect your quarterback, you put him under center. Offensive linemen, Charlie, play better when they're running forward than when they're running backwards in pass protection. You've got to let these guys start to tee off on the opposing defense. And you got to put Jake Browning, who I know is probably less reluctant to get under the center than Joe Burrow is. So to me, if you want to help this offense, you got to put Jake Browning under center. You got to insert someone in that backfield like a Drew Sample, like at the fullback position. And now you got to run with a little bit more heavy emphasis on power run, duos, pin and pull. And then you got to throw with play action because it'll help you protect a little bit better. It helps the offensive line. Teams are less prone to blitz unless they're going to blitz the run play. They're not blitzing the passer when you're loading up at the run game and at the point of contact. In what ways are the Bengals prepared to maybe tailor these things to help Jake Browning so that Jake Browning can help them? Searching for top-notch talent can be difficult, but not with ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you, and they do it very fast. And right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter's smart technology identifies top talent for your roles quickly, immediately after you post for your job. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology starts showing you qualified people to match every single opportunity. ZipRecruiter lets you connect with top candidates ASAP. And you can use ZipRecruiter's pre-written invite to apply message to personally reach out to your favorite candidates and encourage them to apply even sooner. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for. That's the needle in the haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at this exclusive website, ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Well, here's the sad thing. They did a lot of different stuff with their running scheme against the Vikings. They made some real changes heading into week 3. There was more under center. There were way more outside runs. They were trying to use the perimeter more to their advantage. They were trying to run behind their big tackles more than they had. They were asking their tight ends to do less in the run scheme, which was good. They made all these changes, opponent specific, and then they failed. So that's really the balance here. And Dan Pitcher talked about this some yesterday. How much is it, all right, you need to keep refreshing your run scheme on a week-to-week basis to account for your opponent, but how do you not lose sight of these are the things we're good at, these are what our strengths are, this is what we need to do it's a really tricky balance, and the Bengals don't have answers in any of those areas right now.
I got to ask you this because this is the meat of their schedule. This Viking games was the first game, and then you got the Denver Broncos on the road. And then you've got Detroit, who we just saw in the Monday night game, really dominate, I thought, against the Baltimore Ravens with 225 rushing yards in that game. They sacked Lamar Jackson 7 times in the game. They are one of the more physical, more dominant and creative offensive teams, right? With a dominant offensive line and a defense is getting after it. And then you got Green Bay, one of the top-ranked pass rushes with Micah Parsons. These next 3 games are going to tell us a lot about what kind of team we got here in Cincinnati. Am I right?
And that's the problem. It doesn't get any easier, and it's a Denver defense especially that can replicate a lot of what Minnesota just did. And you've got these elite pass rushers coming up on the schedule, and Orlando Brown has to take significant steps in the right direction very quickly. So I blame the offensive line for the pass, but now's the point where it really does come down to coaching and the adjustment process and getting guys to develop quicker than the normal expected pace, because that's kind of the Bengals' only way forward.
All right, now it's time to look ahead. And of course, this segment is brought to you by Anjanette France of Sipsey Klein Realty. You can use the promo code at the bottom of your screen to find her. She's the one that helps the players, of course, to make plays. She is the playmaker when it comes to all of your real estate needs. And look, Charlie, it's hard to play in Denver. I went to school in Boulder, Colorado. I think the disclaimer, the altitude is different. It's a different atmosphere, and it gets loud in that stadium. And they arguably have one of the best defenses in the National Football League. Get this, they rank 3rd with 12 sacks through their first 3 games. That means they average 4 sacks per game. They rank number 1 by far with the most quarterback hits, 25 hits on the quarterback through the first 3 games. They have the highest number of total pressures on the opposing quarterback, and they rank even higher than the Minnesota Vikings with a pressure rate of 50.4%. And I think the Vikings came in around 46%. So it's about to get even more difficult to protect the quarterback or to run the football. Vance Joseph well. We played against this defense last year, and I can tell you right now, he's been seething ever since. He's a good friend of mine. They just left the Lions' den against Minnesota, and now they're going into a Sharks' den against the Denver Broncos this week on Sunday.
The story of that game last year was the Broncos I'm not saying anything about Denver's defense or Vance Joseph, but they kind of gave up just because they had no answer for Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. They just had nothing. So they abandoned their identity. They started blitzing the heck out of Burrow and just hoping that he made a bad play. And it might have been one of the best performances of Burrow's entire career. But with what we've seen against Browning against the blitz, does he even have the pocket presence and the aggression and the ability to take advantage of a matchup like, say, T. Higgins versus Riley Moss while he's facing that pressure the way he did last season? And it's funny, too. I believe Devin Cochran played most of that game at tackle for the Bengals. And Devin Cochran is worse than any offensive lineman the Bengals have now. But is the Bengals line even worse now than it was in week 17 of last season? That's a question. And I'm even remembering, Orlando Brown played that game on a broken leg. But they still had answers. They still had a path. Burrow dragged them out. He had the presence to find his receivers. If you don't have that, and you don't have that up front you can rely on, that's just tough way to live.
Yeah, they doubled Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins feasted on Riley Moss. You should know that the Denver Broncos did a few things this offseason in preparation for games like when they play the Cincinnati Bengals. They looked at the schedule and said, wait, we got to get better on the back end. We also got to get better with our pressure packages. And they used their first-round pick on the University of Texas defensive back, Jahdae Barron, who won the Thorpe Award last year as the best defensive back in all of college football. It wasn't Travis Hunter from the University of Colorado. It was Jahdae Barron. And this kid can flat out play. So you're talking about Patrick Surtain. You now have Jahdae Barron. Jaquan McMillan. They have one of the top secondary units in the National Football League. They have multiple people and Nick Bonito and guys who can get after the quarterback as well. So I think they were planning on having a more diversified coverage scheme where they feel they can match up now with our wide receivers. This is going to be very interesting. We got to be able to run the football. If we go in there thinking we could throw it on every single down and drop back and throw on it against this kind of pressure package, it's going to be a long day.
And that's the thing. They'll probably enter this game plan with the exact game plan they had for Minnesota. Run the ball, play field position, try to make Bo Nix make a mistake, keep doing all of those things, protect the football that they did so poorly in Minnesota that they lost by 38 points or whatever it was. So they'll probably just try to do some similar things with some new ideas and hope there's better execution. And that's the best plan they have right now because they're a bit hamstrung from an overall strengths perspective because of what they're missing and what they're not getting.
Getting the ball out of the hands of the quarterback quickly is key, particularly in hostile environments like this. Jake Browning, in roughly the 2 games he's played this year, he's been sacked, 4 times, 5 interceptions, 67% completion percentage, a passer rating at 67, which is below what we would expect. That's just through 2 games. However, it's come against some really good defenses. Jacksonville leads the league in takeaways, and we know what Minnesota Vikings are, and I think they're getting ready to play a better defense going into Denver. Why aren't we doing more screen game? We don't run screen, a lot of screen. I like.
No, we're looking for something. We're looking for something.
I'm looking for something. You and I know what helps quarterbacks: quick throws, quick slants. The screen game is an extension of the run game. It's another way to get the ball in the hands of Chase Brown without handing it to him behind the line of scrimmage, because that's not working very much. So I'm just trying to think of something imaginative and something more creative than our run game and some of the things that we just haven't been doing. And some of those things that we didn't do with Burrow that I know we can do with Jake Browning. And that is getting under center, having more play action pass, maybe a few more RPOs. Give me some screen game where you could maybe be a little bit more elusive. I think it helps our offensive line. I think this offensive line is built better to run the ball with power and duos when you're double teaming on some of the interior guys. It's a big offensive line. You and I both know that, Charlie. Maybe that's what they're better at doing than the other stuff that we've been trying.
It's funny. It felt like that was the one thing that worked for them against Minnesota as they started to move the ball there in the second quarter. They tried, some jet sweeps, an end around, some perimeter screens. Heck, the play that Noah Fant fumbled, I thought that was a terrific design with Chase Brown out in space, blocking for Noah Fant. Fant made a nice move upfield. There was a lot to like, and then Fant dropped the ball. So yes, I like a lot of these opportunities and ideas to try some different stuff. There is a part of it too that's just about players and execution, and it's got to be better. And we keep going back to the same things, but there should be some new ideas, and you had some great ones right there that we have seen work some for the Bengals this season and in previous years.
I think what we're finding too is that our defense, it travels. The defense.
Yeah.
I think Al Goda's doing a good job with this unit. I love what Jordan Battle is giving this secondary. I think he's a really stable player, great communicator. I think we're tackling much better. There are some positive things that if we could just protect the football and not turn it over. Remember, Bo Nix is struggling right now in his second year. He's still a good quarterback. Remember, he connected against us on a couple of deep balls. I think our secondary needs to be aware of that. He's good at throwing the deep ball, but man, if we can just hunker down, tackle well, right? Because they have J.K. Dobbins, who's a really good running back for them. The Broncos want to run the ball and take shots down the field and play action pass. If our defense can come away with a couple of turnovers, I'm going to give us a chance to go into Denver and come out a winner. What say you, Charlie?
Yeah, the formula, not obviously in terms of it's obvious, but in terms of it's obviously always the turnover battle.
Yeah.
We saw it last week. We saw it in week 2 and week 1 when the Bengals forced the Jaguars and the Browns to make a lot of mistakes. I like what I'm seeing in terms of this defense being opportunistic. Jordan Battle has a nose for the ball. Dax Hill is flying around the field. The Bengals had some creative blitz concepts that nearly forced Wentz to turn the ball over a few times. There's stuff there. There's stuff to work with. And you know what? They probably just need to be the team now that, they're the ones punching it out. Heck, Oren Burks had a really nice rep in the second half, I Bleav, where he got that same punch that Isaiah Rodgers did. So identifying opportunities like that's their only shot. That's their best shot, and that's what they've got to do.
There you go. Good stuff per usual from our Bengals Insider Charlie Goldsmith. Charlie, we thank you for joining us. It wasn't under the best circumstances this week. Hopefully next week it's a little bit better once we leave Denver. We want to thank you. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Don't forget to send in those questions because we're going to be checking it. Go to heroes.com to order your Bengals tumbler. And of course, if you send great questions, we'll send you one for free. Bleav in Bengals podcast, presented by FanDuel. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you again next time. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/pro and use the promo code PRO at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/pro and enter the promo code PRO at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/pro. Promo code PRO.